coming to the new Zibby Bookshop, and Lily Chu has her new book that came out this week. Yay! Yesterday. And you've been where have you been so far before this?
I was in Berkeley, and then Sacramento, and now here, and then tomorrow I'm in Culver City.
Okay. So she's been
a village? Is it
the
village book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other west side.
Which I got very confused because I'm like, is it LA? I don't know. Is it all LA? And everyone's like, well, it's LA, but it's not LA. I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
so am I in LA?
And you're originally from Toronto, or
I'm in
you live there
Toronto. All of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's Canadian, so be nice.
I've been there many times.
Okay. So yes, you especially be nice. Okay, so let's get started about just talking about your book. So I'll ask her a few questions, and then we'll open it for Q&A, and then she'll do signing, and I'll sign it to you, and we will be on our merry way. But thank you all for coming out. I know this is a beautiful day, and it was like hard to compete against Netflix, so thank you. So you had 2 books come out recently, and so I always like to talk to authors about where their origin story. So how and why did you get into writing?
So I've written the last 20 years or so, but it wasn't until 2019 going to 2020 that I decided to start writing rom-coms, and that was because in romance, you might not know, but all sorts of kind of nasty things kind of happen within the romance environment with writers to do with discrimination and racism. And the books I was writing wasn't really addressing that in the way I kind of wanted to. So I ended up writing The Stand-In. And then I always, when that was going, I was like, at the time I was writing scenes for the comeback because I really wanted to write a K-pop rom-com. So I was kind of writing them both at the same time, and then now the comeback's out.
Oh my goodness. So you had a different type of path than the traditional path to publication. For example, you have Philippa, is that how you pronounce her name?
Sue, yeah.
She's the narrator of your
Yes.
book. So I'd just love to know how she ended up being your narrator, but also like just how you ended up coming out with your debut and through the way you went through publishing.
So it was actually my agent who said, I think you should write a rom-com, and I wasn't sure because not funny. And that's like the comedy part of the rom-com. But then when all that stuff went down, I was like, I am going to try. And then I wrote it in the first months of the pandemic. So the pandemic started for us mid-March 2020 is when we went into lockdown. And I had started writing this in January. So it was done by June. So basically I kind of wrote it and did all the editing, and then all the other editing happened during the pandemic as well. And then when it went to auction, Audible is actually just one of the publishers. So I hadn't considered, they only do audio, and that hadn't really been on my radar as something that one did. Like I think I was in the traditional mindset that when you sold your book, you kind of sold it with audio rights at the same time, and then something happened. And eventually you got both versions. But when Audible came along, I thought that was a really kind of interesting way to go about doing it. And the audio and the print audiences they still seem quite different to me. There are people who only do audio, and there's people who only do print. And there's some people who will do both, depending, like they'll only do memoirs in audio, but only if that memoir is narrated by the person who wrote the memoir, or they'll only do nonfiction. And so there's all, kind of different permutations. And then it was Audible who said, hey, we're looking at some people to narrate your book. What do you think? And Philippa's name was one of the names on it. Wow. And I was like, yes, so call me when that happens. Never. And then I got an email from my editor saying, she's on board. I was like, and I threw my phone and I screamed. And then I had to go after my phone and find my phone to make sure that that's what the email said. And it was good because Philip is also biracial. My main character is, and when you give your book to someone to narrate, I didn't realize how much trust is actually involved because they're interpreting your book. So in my head, I kind of thought I just read it, like, you just, like you're reading your kids a bedtime story. And then I kind of realized, no, it's going to be her interpretation of how she perceives the book. Like, the words are mine, but the way that she puts different nuances and sentences, that's her. And I knew that there are parts in the book where I didn't have to worry about explaining it or going through, like, this is what the emotion she's feeling is for these reasons, because she would have had those similar experiences, and would just kind of get it.
It's funny when you're writing, do you think about the other mediums, meaning like this could be an audiobook, so I need to think about like how that would be, like I didn't do that for my first few things I was writing, but then when I heard the audiobook where they're reading text messages and things like that, it just ends up being weird if it's a long string of messages. Because it's funny on like as a visual aid, but then when you actually hear it spoken, you're like, actually, it wasn't supposed to be this long and drawn out, and you're a little cringy. So do you have you started to kind of think about these things, or do you not have that same problem?
No, it was exactly the same experience. So the first, that was written for print, so it was what it was. But when I was writing the comeback, I had that idea, like remembering that it was going to be audio, and how are those text messages? Because for me, it was text messages as well. So mine always actually, they start with the character name. So it's, Ari, colon, exciting dialogue, Jihoon, colon, exciting dialogue. But when she's reading it out, it sounds very like Ari, duh, Jihoon, duh. But then, so for the next one, I was like, that sounds weird to me, because it's very like rat-a-tat. And I talked to the editor, and I'm like, should we change it to long strings of dialogue? And she's like, no, it looks good on the page, but when you actually read it out, readers or listeners kind of need that indicator of who's talking, because you don't have the visual indicator of the different colored bubbles or whatnot. So now I do, like, I always do audio checks on my books anyway, but now I do way more. So I probably listen to it 3 to 5 times, and I'm looking for the flow of the sentences, but I'm also looking for your eye won't trip up, but if you're reading it, like too many S's in a row or too many P's in a row, or words that just don't sound right together, but when you're reading it, they look fine and they sound fine in your head. So I'm more cautious with that, but I haven't changed my writing style. Like, I've always had fairly short chapters, fairly short, structure.
Yes. So I'm editing a book, and I saw your short chapters. I was like, I got to do more of that. They're a little long. so thank you, actually, for the reminder.
I went through, like, I word counted. I went through books, and I word counted, because I'm like,
it's a good tip.
Because I went online, I'm like, what's a good chapter length? And it's like, well, it depends what you want to say. I'm like, that's not actually useful. I really, I want a number. So then I went, did some word counting.
So what is the optimal, do you remember? Like the optimal
So for me, it's 2,500.
Okay.
So I get uncomfortable if it's like, if we start getting 1,500, that's too short for me, unless I want a really impactful chapter where it's like, this one scene is a big deal and you need to know it because it's one chapter. And once we start getting like 3,000, 3,500, I'm like, it's like getting a little long. You guys need to be quieter. So I start trimming it down. So that's usually where I have around.
Gotcha. So actually, why don't we take a step back and you just tell everyone what the comeback is about.
Yes, so it's a K-pop rom-com, which I think I mentioned, and it's about Ari, who is a super workaholic, work-obsessed lawyer who wants to make a partner and has no room in her life for anything else but that. And when she comes home one day, there is a surprisingly super hot dude asleep on her couch who turns out to be her cousin's, her roommate's cousin, her roommate / best friend's cousin, who is dealing with a breakup in Seoul and just needs to kind of get away and chill out for a bit. And it turns out that he isn't actually getting over a breakup, but he is in fact a famous K-pop idol that she does not recognize because she is under a cultural rock.
So before I ask questions about K-pop, because I have a lot, I wanted to just ask you, and then also people here, who is the most, who's the biggest celebrity you've either run into or have, in your past or even recently? Doesn't have to be.
I
Kate.
passed Emilio Estevez on the street.
When?
Like 99. Like 1999, when you would have recognized Emilio Estevez on the street. I used to work at a university and at home for a convocation, you know, when all the graduates graduate, there's always like a famous speaker person, right? So I was in the PR department, and our job was to kind of escort the famous speaker person. And there were some like really like Margaret Atwood type names, and I got Lorne Michaels.
Oh, wow.
From Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
So he did not talk to me or in fact look at me. So I did not get scouted. But that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you good at recognizing people though? I'm terrible.
No,
at
I'm
it.
terrible.
Yeah.
I'm terrible
Okay.
at it.
Same.
Like even people I know.
That's right. So anybody else, like, have you run into anybody recently, especially in LA? I'm just kind of curious because I want to know who's out and about. Yes, I know, and it happens, and they're just like walking around.
I had dinner a couple weeks ago in Silver Lake, and I saw Christina Hendricks.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
She's just as pretty in person. I feel like
Oh,
sometimes
gosh.
more.
Wow.
I can see that.
So her hair is as it
Super
is.
red, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I had to know.
That's
It's like, is it
amazing.
actually blonde and she does that? Okay, that's amazing.
That's cool.
I see celebrities all the time at Gold's.
Oh, yes, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, the mostest famousest.
Oh, I've run next to the Rock on the treadmill and pretended I was in a movie.
Celebrities go to like regular people gyms?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Not
Yes.
celebrity people gyms?
No.
That's your next book. Your
Yes.
next book's
Oh
gonna be
my
Gold's.
God.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's close to here. It's not, it's like
You know
2 miles
Dunkin'
away.
Donuts here,
Uh-huh.
the one on 7th Street, the Sherry place, because I lived in the Boston area, you know, Ben Affleck, he's from Cambridge, right? He's got to have his Dunkin' Donuts, and then somebody said, they've seen him there at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Really?
And
Yeah.
I said, and so I was telling my trader, because I trade virtually with her back in Massachusetts, she goes, I said, listen, maybe, do you want me to go scout at Dunkin' Donuts because my doctor's across the street? I said, yeah, next time I have an appointment, I'm going to sit out there. But why does he go to Dunkin' Donuts? I wouldn't even drink that coffee. Like.
I know somebody who
Maybe
eats
they have a
Dunkin'
history with Dunkin'.
All over the place.
Do tell.
There was
Maybe.
one in Amsterdam, and you know what people were doing? It was really crazy. In Amsterdam, everybody was standing in front taking a picture. This is the photo op with people walking by. You said, "You could go all the way to Amsterdam just to take a picture for the
Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh.
I took a picture of the Carlos Bake Shop
Oh,
that I saw
yes,
down the
that's
street.
yeah.
So.
Oh, the vanilla.
It's like, because back home, they're vending machines.
Oh.
So you get the Carlos cakes in the vending machines. At
Oh
the
yeah, the
mall.
cake boss.
Yeah.
Oh, the cake
So
boss.
then I saw the actual, I'm
Oh.
like, oh my God.
Big boss.
So then I had to
That's
take a
a
photo.
cake boss.
I was going to say Ben Affleck too, because he goes to Wood Meats and Jennifer Gardner. So that
Oh,
was,
really?
that was fairly recent. Although I heard now his son is going into water polo, so those days are over for me.
That tracks.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Right. April, any celebrities? I feel like you would have seen some like out and about.
I can't think of any recent ones. I think my very first one, I can tell you that,
Mhm.
was huge for me. Back in the early 90s, I lived in a small town in Virginia called Yorktown,
Oh, I know what that is.
and Pierce Brosnan
What?
came through and filmed a horrible movie about the revolution.
Oh my gosh!
And my mom found out about it, and we went and watched the film. Like it was like an open set.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
nice. And Pierce Brosnan was just like walking around, and we had pictures of us with him. And like at one point, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna faint," and he's like, "Oh, don't do that." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" So and we were in like such a teeny little town, so that was like
Yes.
amazing. But then I come here and you know I go to Whole Foods and I like you know Adrian Brody's like in front of me. And
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah.
You have a Jason Momoa story too, so.
I watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, I keep it super short. Okay, so when my daughter and your daughter, same age,
Yeah.
when she was a teeny tiny baby, I took this really crunchy kind of like saltwater pool, B1 with water kind of swim class.
Oh, she was
And
cute.
it was a very
Aquaman
small
was there.
thing. It was in Culver City, And the woman, it was just her pool in her backyard, and she had like a little pool house, and she's like, okay, come on over at 6 o'clock, we'll do an orientation. I was like, orientation? Why do you need orientation for swim class? Anyway, so I went, and the pool house was probably like a third of this room. So like really little, and there's like a bed, a bathroom, and some throw pillows all around. So we're sitting there with our little babies, and she's starting the thing, and in walks Lisa Bonet and Jason Momoa.
Oh my God.
Was he wearing
That
clothes?
tracks.
I mean, and I'm sitting here with my baby, and this
Trying not to
big
freak
hulk
out.
of a man walks into this low-ceiling teen room, and the woman tells a joke, and he starts laughing, and he has this deep boom. And my child, Maya, screaming.
Oh my
And
God.
so Jason Momoa is running over to my child. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm just big and I have a deep voice.
Oh.
Dying. I'm like,
Did he have the huge beard too?
he didn't have a beard, but he had like
Yeah.
tats and
And he's
like, you
giant-
know,
Yeah.
hair and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Oh
And
my
Was he
God,
shirtless?
that sounds sweet.
How did you-
We have lots of questions.
Demonstrations.
I have so many questions.
This is moving into like a fantasy situation.
These kids were gonna take her class, and so they had to do orientation too.
Wow. Celebrities, they are just like us.
They are. Apparently Gold's Gym, regular old swim class. That's
Swim
so
class,
funny.
you know.
I was like, you didn't talk about Jason Momoa? What? you found other people? All right, 2 more.
You can go.
I feel like celebrities. Come on.
Jamie Lee Curtis ate at the restaurant across the street from here about like I would say like a week after
Which
she won
one?
the Oscar, Portofino's.
Oh, really?
Portofino?
Okay.
Yeah, it's
she's
really good pasta also, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, sure.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
I didn't know she was around here. Sometimes you just kind of know where celebrities live. They like have little
Do you
enclaves.
know where canyons?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so it makes sense.
I used to ride my bike and I saw her standing outside of her house talking to neighbors.
Oh, she lives in
I was
Palisades?
like,
Oh,
Oh,
it's
it's
on
like-
Mesa.
Makes-
Yeah,
Everyone
she's
knows.
still there, yeah.
The reason I know is her second child had a wedding, and I was like, why is everybody in cosplay? Like one guy was dressed up as Han Solo.
Oh my God.
And I didn't know until I read like weeks later that she had her second child had a wedding, but it was all cosplay in her backyard.
Fascinating.
That's so
What was
fun.
going on.
That's so fun.
We went to Rustic Canyon for the park.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Drake filmed a video at my old workplace.
Oh,
Ah.
that's a good one. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
So funny.
It's funny. Yes, and then Michelle.
I'm a nurse, so I can't disclose all these people.
Ah.
Took your kid up and started IVs on and stuff.
Oh my gosh,
But
yeah.
I did run into Princess Leia, which was alive,
Oh yes,
Uh,
Carrie Fisher.
and the Carrie Fisher in the elevator.
What do you do?
Wow.
Are
It
you a
was really,
medical
really
doctor?
nice. Huh?
Are you a medical doctor?
No, I'm a nurse.
Oh, you put IVs on kids?
Yeah, you know, when they come
Oh,
into
no,
the
yeah,
ER
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that, and I'm like, okay, you're like, you know, you played a really tough guy, and I'm starting an IV and you're squealing. Those kinds of things, like,
Michelle needs to
What?
story.
I'm looking for your vein and they're going like,
so many
Oh, that is
stories,
so
you know.
funny.
You're a nurse in LA, you're gonna see everybody.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you work in the emergency room, they come in for all sorts of things you don't wanna know, like, how did you get in that?
Yes.
The city's something else, man.
Yeah. You gotta come back.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Or move here. Okay.
It was $4 for a pack of gum. I can't afford to move here.
Where'd you buy your gum?
Across the street.
Oh, yeah.
And then
You know,
where
my-
Jamie Lee Curtis shops? No wonder you got ripped off.
She had the $60 pasta.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so let's talk about, so now that we have gotten all this off our chest about who we've seen.
That was a fun stuff.
Yeah, that was a fun stuff. So K-pop, the world of K-pop, that was something that is clearly a passion of yours from reading the book. So let us know like how you got into it and who you like.
All right.
Who are your K-pop
So
favorites?
I got into it right before the pandemic. Has anyone seen Blackpink Kill This Love? You know the video?
Oh my God, yes.
Fucking wild, right? So that's the first
Wild.
K-pop video I saw, and I was like, "What is this?" Because I grew up on like Much Music, the MTV, and like Dire Straits. Like it was not the same realm of reality. So I was like, "Too weird." And then there's this website, and it's bad lip reading, and they take videos and songs and they look at what the lips might say. So there's one song was sampled my pasta, and it was BTS, and it was hilarious.
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, we were watching with my kid, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not the song. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. So I went to go find it. It was Idol by BTS. And I was like, again, a completely bonkers video, and there's like, you know, sharks, and they're in humbug, and dancing on a stage that's floating, and it's all wild. Or they're in suits, and it's bonkers. So there's like, that's really weird. And it was right before they played New York Times Square. So I was watching it on TV, and everyone was going to play card games, and I hate all games. So I was like, I'll just see what's on TV. I'm like, oh, it's BTS. And then I was like, I think I have feelings. I'm like, this is really, I'm like, I'm having emotions. Like, I've been so dead inside for so long. And then that was it. It started with the like if you get into K-pop, you know, the first thing is like, I'm just gonna find out their names.
Yes.
So that was the immediate, like, have to find out their names. And even then, and there's no way to do it without sounding like a jerk, but it's so hard to figure out who is who in the band.
Yes.
Because they don't look the same. Like, one time he's blonde, and then he's got red hair, and then he's got blue hair, and now he's dressed like a space prince, and now he's dressed like a schoolboy. And it's like, I don't know who these dudes are. And so for the longest time I kept messing them up, and I felt like really racist, actually, because I was like, I should be able to tell these guys apart. My kid's like, is it because they're Asian, Mom? I'm like, shut up, it's not. It's because it's like, they've got all these different hairs. I'm like, ask your Popo if she can tell them apart. And Popo couldn't, so I felt vindicated. Yes. But it's like, and every time I get into a new band, I do have that moment of trying to figure out who's who. Because it's like, you look like this, and then you look like this, and you're all like incredibly attractive. So it's not even like you can be like, yeah, he's the hot one, because they're all the hot one. And then,
although in your story you say they have different roles in the
they do have different roles.
Yes.
But when you're just watching the video for the first time or whatever, you can't tell. Like, I had no idea what a visual was, or what a center was, or what the main versus lead vocalist was. Like, I just didn't know. It was just like a bunch of guys dancing the same dance to the same song in a bunch of different environments. And I'm like, why are you doing the same dance? Like, I couldn't, there's a lot of things that I had to kind of get. And then I found this Atlantic article by Lanika Cruz, which was like, just kind of like a good primer to like, this is what a maknae is. And this is, you know, this is why this happens. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I went online and I found like a bunch of like rare articles and stuff. Yeah, and then, you know, from then I went to like BTS, and now I love like all sorts of boy bands. It's still mostly boy bands. My daughter's into girl bands more, so I'm familiar with like Twice and the rest of them, but my heart is with boy bands.
What's your favorite song? Like, if you could hear it on repeat.
It changes.
Okay.
Right now, August D, who's Yoongi from BTS, who is, I believe, on stage in like now.
Shall we check our
online in LA?
Yeah.
He just came out with a new album, and one of the songs on it, D-Day, that's my repeat song right now. It's really good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Kai Rover. I kind of go between the two of them.
What's a good one to work out to?
Oh my God,
for Carrie's sake.
I have a comeback Spotify list, and a lot of those songs are great. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and a lot of like, just as a starter, because a lot of people who are reading the books have, like, I've had people who are like, never heard of K-pop. I was like, okay, well that's something. Because I kind of thought that would be, at least you'd heard of it even if you didn't like it. So it's always interesting to find out like where people come into things, right? And I was kind of like, well, I wonder where you picked it up, you know, if you weren't into K-pop. And they're like, sounded cool. I'm like, that's great. But I've had people not into K-pop at all, listen to the book, and then they will DM me from their first K-pop concert.
Oh, wow.
Which is awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah, they're like, I'm so happy, you know, it's like just something new for me to go to, but yeah, but there's a ton of really good BPM kind of songs. That's when I'm running, it's all I listen to.
Really? All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's very high energy, a lot of it.
That's good to know.
There's also a lot of ballads if you want, like the cool down
I do
music.
love the ballads.
I tend to not like ballads because I think they're sad.
Yeah,
Like,
usually.
and I'm like, I can do that on my own.
Not in the
I
gym.
don't need music to help me up there.
Yeah, that's the 23 hours of the day for me.
Yeah.
And now some Canada questions that are references in your book.
Okay.
It's more like I didn't run this by you, but it's like
What is it?
more like do you actually recommend it or thumbs down?
Okay.
Going to Niagara Falls, is it overrated? Is it actually
It's
something you
amazing.
should go? Okay.
It's amazing.
Everybody, we all need to go to
So
Niagara
the
Falls.
falls are great. The Canadian side's better, sorry.
Yeah, that's true, that's very
Canadian
true.
side's better. But if you go to the Buffalo side, if you go to the US side, they have a national park there.
Yeah.
And you can go, like, walk up to the edge of the falls. Like,
Yeah,
the edge
Yeah,
of the
no
falls.
kidding, yeah.
Wow.
As in, one wrong step and you're done for. But on the Canadian side, it's falls, but then it's also Clifton Hill is this. Imagine your pier on like a big street that's like, or Fishman's Wharf plus your pier on a street that goes up a hill. So it's got, Ripley's Believe It or Not, it's got a mini golf that has like a flaming volcano. It's got a Ferris wheel that I was gonna go on, except I was in line. And then I felt something tap my shoulder. I'm like, what is that? And I look, and it's a screw that had fallen from the Ferris
Oh
wheel.
my god.
And I'm looking at it, and then I hear another tap, and it's another screw. And I'm like, I think I'm not gonna go on the Ferris wheel
Is
today.
that why you didn't go to the Ferris wheel on the pier?
The reason I didn't go to the Ferris wheel on the pier is because I used to work at a place called Ontario Place, which was a summer.
Oh, I know what it is.
Yeah, it's like a summer by the water, had an IMAX theater, and just it was a summery, resorty sort of thing, and there's boats. But we have what's called the X the end of every August, which is a big fair. It's a Canadian National Exhibition. So they put up all sorts of carnival rides.
Oh.
And when I was biking to work, I would pass through them in the morning, and they'd be setting up the rides, and there would just be like booze and like weed, and I'm like, I'm never going on those rides, man. Like, ever again.
Sounds terrible. So nobody do that, but go to Niagara Falls.
Go to absolutely go to Niagara Falls, and stay at the Sheraton. You get a beautiful view of it's worth the falls view, paying falls view, because you get a view of the falls plus the barge that's being stuck in the river for ages. It's very pretty.
And Maid of the Mist.
And go and Made in This. It is worth the money.
Yeah, I went, well, I had lived in the Boston area for like 4 decades, so every time we go to Toronto, we would go through there, but all the casinos are on the Buffalo side, and if you want great Indian food, they're all over the place, right?
We also have casinos too.
Yeah, but I think there was more on the other side. I think the U.S. side's a little more. The
Yeah, but your
Canadian
dollar
side's
goes way
nicer.
more on my side. Yeah, you're like, you can gamble like so much more.
Well,
Canada. Okay, poutine. Not just poutine. You mentioned nacho poutine, and the way you described it, I was like, I don't know about that. So why don't you describe what it is, and we can decide if we would actually eat.
Okay, everyone knows what poutine is.
yeah.
Yes.
Do we? Does everybody know what poutine is?
The
Okay.
classic poutine is French fries, gravy, and cheese curds, not shaved mozzarella or whatever stuff you're gonna put on it. But that is not enough. So there is now just a proliferation of poutine things. So there's butter chicken poutine, which is actually fantastic. It's basically like you just put anything that's kind of saucy on fries, and we call it poutine, right?
Yeah.
So the nacho poutine I actually made up, but I would not.
Okay.
I
So
would
like-
not be surprised if it existed, because it's a pretty it must exist, honestly. So I would give that an absolute thumbs up, because everything's better on fries.
That is true. All right, last question for me, and then we'll ask if anybody here has any questions. What are you working on? What's next for you? What is book 3?
Okay, so book 3 is called The Takedown, and it is about a diversity consultant who takes a job in luxury fashion. And I'm currently writing a fiction book that's about a family of ancient Chinese witches who can change emotions through perfume, and another rom-com which is about an obituary writer.
Oh, the obituary writer would be.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. So I talked to, she's an obituary editor, but she also writes them as well.
That's so funny. I have an obituary in mind, but it's a minor point. All right, let's open it up for questions. Anybody have questions for me, her,
Morgana, questions?
each other? more questions about Jason Momoa?
But Drake,
Drake.
everyone, like, Drake got doxxed, and everyone's like, everyone knows where Drake lives.
Really?
Everyone. Yeah, everyone knows where he lives.
I didn't know he was I didn't know where he lived actually. So now I'm like, where does he live?
He has a huge house in the Bridle Path, which
Okay.
features in some of his pandemic videos. It has a full-length basketball court, and it looks exactly like how you think Drake's house would look. Absolutely.
Any questions?
Where do your story ideas come from?
The stand-in came in just from the kind of, I wanted to write a celebrity book, and I love like hidden identity, I like secret, like I love those kinds of things. So it just came up with the idea of like, standing in for a celebrity and like what the kind of people that do it, because there are people who are body doubles, like not just the stunt doubles, but body doubles for various things. So I was thinking, like, what if you did that in real life for a celebrity? So that's where that one came from. And then the comeback was basically like, there aren't that many adult rom-coms with K-pop. Most of them are in the YA space, which is great. But it's just those characters are dealing with different parts of their lives or different issues. They're looking at, what if I make the wrong choice? And I wanted characters who are looking back going, did I make the wrong choice? Like, did I do the right thing? So I wanted to age them up and just be dealing with more adult stuff.
We have looky-loos. We had a few, and I was like, do you want to come in? I'm not sure. Okay. Yeah, as far as other, like, book idea for The Do-Over came from a nightmare. And that one was the dream that you have where you feel you wake up and you are in a classroom and you have to take an exam and you haven't actually taken the class before. So there's variations of that dream that I've heard other people saying, I've had that dream, and it's like the high school dream where you can't graduate because you didn't take a certain class. And in a work environment, it's like having to give a presentation and you don't actually have any of the slides, you just have to wing it. It's like variations of that. That hit me during the pandemic, and that was the kind of the idea for The Do-Over. I wrote a note to my editor and I was like, how would you feel about this type of book that stems from this kind of horrible dream? And she was like, it sounds crazy and chaotic and kind of weird. That sounds right up your alley. So why don't you see what happens? And yeah, just make it funny and whatever. So I was like, okay. And that's how that one happened. So they really come out from random places, to be honest.
I gotta ask, the swim test.
Yes.
Is that legit?
Yes, that actually came up at a recent panel. Somebody asked me, the moderator, so there's a swim test in this book where okay, so let me start over. So in The Do-Over, Lily Lee is a career consultant, and she's also an author, and she writes career books, and she has, interviewed, and she has leads for like the perfect job, and she's writing about that. And then she finds out during the background check that she didn't actually graduate, so she has to go back to college and finish her degree 10 years later. So she goes back to college and then finds out that her TA is her ex-college boyfriend. And while I was creating the most chaotic book in that sense, I was like, what else could I do to her while she's in college? And I was like, oh, I'll make her have to do the swim test before she can graduate, which has nothing to do with the academic part, but it's like also a horrible thing if you're not a good swimmer. So she does have to do this. And it's funny, so I was saying in panel this weekend that there was a reviewer that was like, this book is so outlandish. I can't believe she would just make up the swim test, like colleges have swim tests. I was like, I know. I was like, did you Google
it and passed?
Yes.
I had to backflip.
Yes, I had to take it.
What
I know
was
other
the
people.
point of it?
I don't know.
No, it's a requirement as part of the Common Core.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to public school in California, public higher education, you have to take swimming. And then even some of the private schools, but this is really funny because my husband went to Brandeis. He was one of 6 Asians there, and I said, "How come you don't know how to swim?" Because he would drive by and says, "Oh, there's the swimming pool there," he said they built the pool after he graduated.
Oh, yeah. So that's the thing, what I did in this book is like, she didn't have it the first time around, but then they get an endowment.
Oh, because
And it's usually somebody
Yeah.
in the endowment will say, and this is usually why it's still legacy for some places, the original person who gave the money was like, the condition is this. And it's usually based on somebody knows somebody who drowned and they want to make sure that everybody coming through the program knows how to swim. But then when people start, like historians started digging into that, it's like, who is this person that's drowned? Like nobody knows. Like it's all folklore.
It's
Nobody.
in your book?
Yeah, no, that's not in my book, but that is part of like why the whole reason why people have swim tests. They've built it
My
on that.
school had one of those things too,
Wow.
like those legends.
Yes, it's a
Her name
legend.
was Ida Noyes, and apparently she died, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, if you Google these people now, you're like, wait, actually that person doesn't exist, or nobody knows the real origin of why this is happening. But then a lot of colleges got rid of their swim tests, the ones that did have it, and then during the pandemic, which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But then some of them brought it back, and it's like, why did you do that? You literally had like 2 years of not having to have a swim test, and then I think there's 11 colleges now that still have it. On the East
You
Coast.
did your research, so you could answer that
Yeah,
question.
right. Not to that reviewer though. It's like so outlandish. I can't believe she would just make up the swim test. I was like, you literally can just Google college swim test and there will be 11 universities and then like the 24 or whatever that also canceled it during the pandemic and didn't bring it back. But it's weird that they would bring it back. I don't understand.
It's weird.
It
The
is
whole thing
strange.
was weird.
One or two more questions? Anybody?
Is there an idol you based the
No, I tried so hard. I Googled so many names and then finally found one where I'm like, okay, there doesn't seem to be an idol with this combination of names. Because I was like, so the Starloon is the band, Jihoon is the main character, and I even changed the names. It was Star Moon, and I'm like, Star Moon, SM. I'm like, nope. So I tried it so hard to not base it on a specific idol or band, but I watched like just so much content, like the reality shows, Kingdom Legendary Wars, such like amazing show, oh my god. The V Lives, the Weverses, all the In the Soups, all of the,
It's just so hard to follow. They're so chaotic.
they're so chaotic. Everything's so chaotic. But I watched it all to try to get, like, the Rolling Stone interviews, all the enemy, like all the interviews, to try and get the little bits, like from various real people, so I could kind of meld them into one, honestly, kind of perfect guy. I love him so much.
He was very perfect.
He's very perfect.
It's dreamy.
Yeah.
Do you watch any Korean dramas? Because a lot of them kind of have these kind of themes.
Yes. So I watched Goblin. Which actually has a kind of nod in the book, like a small Easter egg. So if you know the drama, you would probably recognize it, because my friend's like, the drama where it's like hot guys in turtlenecks. I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, although really it doesn't narrow it down, to be honest.
Yes.
Right now I'm watching Tail Nine Tails because the 1939 one is like, I'm getting all the stuff for that, so I have to watch it. But it takes me so long to watch them because I don't watch a lot of TV. It's really hard for me to focus, and they're 1 trillion episodes, and each episode's 3 hours.
What is this that you're watching?
Like K-dramas in general, like they're just so
Yeah.
long, but Tale of Nine Tails.
Tale of
Yeah.
Nine Tails. Okay.
I like the supernatural ones a bit more.
Yeah.
I want to watch, what's it called? Eternal Monarch? King Eternal Monarch? That sounded really good. So it's on my list. And I'm also watching The Untamed, which is a sea drama, which is 50 episodes.
Oh my.
And I'm like,
God, I just watched a C
12.
drama that was 30 and I was like, wow, they really are this
oh
long.
my god. The budget for this thing must just be
Yeah.
absolutely surreal.
They're addictive.
Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah.
I started watching it because we were in lockdown, and I had just gotten here, and I was living in Airbnb while I was looking for a house, and we couldn't go out, right? I said, oh my god, these Korean dramas are so addictive. Because one of my friends is really into it. I had some friends that followed the actors because they were on location. I guess in Quebec, they followed them. They knew they were on location. They followed them there.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a couple that's retired taking pictures with the actors. I mean,
The
she
fandom
posted
ultimate,
on
yeah.
Facebook, and I go like, you guys have a life, you know.
They do.
Yeah.
They are following their idols.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, they knew where they were gonna be. They knew they were gonna be filming there for a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, there was a stakeout. Yeah.
Well, I watched Kingdom,
Yes.
the zombie one.
Yes.
And I watched that our first week of lockdown, and that was not wise. But I was like, I knit an entire sweater and just washed this thing for a week straight, and then I was like, okay, I'm prepared. I've got my sweater. Like, I know what to do if there's a zombie attack, which, you know, honestly, we could be getting in a matter of days. I didn't know at that point. But yeah, but that was a.
And you had a sweater outfit.
Korean
Yes.
zombies are amazing.
They
aren't
are.
Oh my
There are
gosh.
There's so
other
many.
levels.
They're
So
all
did you
good.
watch Physical 100?
I heard
The
that
zombie choreographer that was in it?
cool. Did you see him?
Yes!
Oh,
Oh my
He was
god!
like a little.
It was,
Did you
I
see how he
couldn't
jumped
believe
and how he
it.
got?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Anyway, if you
Now that
haven't
you
watched
mention it, now I remember him.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that he was the zombie choreo, but the way
He
you
was.
Yes.
The way
That
he
makes
jumped.
sense.
Remember, he keeps on
It was
jumping
Yes.
backwards
creepy.
and-
Yes. He
Yeah.
was so, and he would just fly in the air to the neck, like jump
Yeah,
around.
exactly.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's just there, and I'm like, oh, okay.
And that they're so good at their storytelling. How did
Yes.
we know of the 100 people and we got to know them
Yeah,
so well?
it was,
right?
that show was so good. And, you know, and because we started watching it, and then, you know, they did the weekly releases, which I hate. Like,
Me too.
I was like, but everyone I knew was watching it, so, but we weren't allowed to talk about it until the last person had finished watching.
No.
So, because, you know, you didn't want to spoil it for them because it was, you know, you kind of knew who was going to win, but you're like, but I want, come on.
Man, those challenges, those Sisyphus or something, remember when he was like,
Yes.
oh my goodness, how did
I
he do
cannot
that?
believe someone did not rupture an aorta or something. I
Right.
thought someone was going to have a heart attack and die. And I was praying it wasn't Sexyama because I loved him.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes, I remember.
Yeah.
Well, how about the guy that was just able to just jump from here to
Oh.
up there?
Yeah, and he was like, it was fine by the end of them. And he didn't even change expression.
No.
He just,
He was just like, all right, let me just jump like over my height
yeah.
I
Standing
didn't even
was
do
getting
that.
started.
without a trampoline.
And then
Like
those
those
guys
guys.
with the big guns were the first ones to fall off, you know?
That's right.
Yeah. But the car dealer was great.
Yes.
I really liked him.
There were some real nice
There were some good
like
personalities in there.
personalities. there,
Yeah.
yes.
How
Yeah.
they support each other. Right?
The conversations are like
They
this.
were like so
Yeah.
funny, right?
The Americans ones are like, I'm not here to make friends.
Yeah.
It's so wholesome, you know,
Yeah.
that's why I love it.
Like, and that was, I found like the big difference when I started watching like the Kingdom Legendary Awards, like basically a K-pop battle of the bands, but with established bands.
Okay.
And they were all like, so it's like
Oh, right.
B2B and SF9 and ATEEZ and Stray Kids. So they're like fairly icons in it. You know, like they're big bands.
Uh-huh.
And they all had to do these, like, compete with these performances that were just honestly mind-blowing. Like one had like gigantic squid tentacles and everything. But they're all like, you're amazing and you did so good. Like even when they weren't talking to people, like they were in their own green rooms watching the performances and they're like, oh my God, did you see that? And they're just like all hyping each other up. I'm like,
The support, you know. It's so wholesome. I loved it.
If you haven't seen Physical 100, definitely.
oh my God.
Yes.
Physical 100, it's amazing.
It's amazing.
I think I cried at some point. You
So
know?
I cried. I cried for sure.
I didn't think I was gonna like it. That first episode, and my husband goes, "No, Michelle, come on, let's keep on going."
Oh, I knew I was gonna like it.
Let's do this.
I knew.
And I'm
Like the shirts came off, I
every
knew I
moment
was
just
gonna like
wanna
it
watch
very much.
It's so good.
Well, it's hard to even understand what it was going to be about. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I think that was the problem. Is like how when you were first watching, you're like, "What is this?" And then you start seeing.
Psychology of it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that first thing where they're hanging, I was like, "Ooh."
Wow.
Yeah.
So I went to the gym after that because I'm like, it can't be that hard. So the first competition is I just have to hang, like did hang, right? And I'm like, how hard can that be? And so I think the winner got like over half an hour, like some amount of time where I'm like, can't be that hard. So I go to the gym, not even 10 seconds, and I drop like a stone. I was like, oh wow, like maybe they are in shape. Maybe these incredibly fit people are in shape.
But then you realize it's not just strength, like physical strength of like your arms or your legs. Sometimes it's also other things, being agile in
Yeah.
some cases. And
Also, which I could
He
not
was
do.
like a mountain rescuer, right? That was
Yeah.
so nice,
Yeah.
He was
Amazing.
He was the rope. He's like, he looked
Yeah,
like he was
He
bored.
did. He was
so
like, he's like
relaxed.
just hanging around. Like,
Yeah.
I could do this for the whole day, and you know. And I'm thinking, oh my god, that's really hard.
he's not even sweating.
No, he was
No,
just like,
no. Oh my goodness, these people.
it was a good show.
Yes.
Had a good show.
Well, that's it. I think thanks you for having us. Zibby.
Yes, thank you.
Everybody buy the comeback.
Please do.
Yes.
I like that very much.
When's your book coming out? Your next one?
Next one is out in audio next fall, and then it'll be out in print probably May again, like so a year from now.
So fall this year or fall next year?
Oh, this year.
Oh, okay. Wow. So
Yeah, the print
Okay.
or the audio comes out a lot earlier. So if you have Audible, you can kind of listen to all the books. Philippa does an awesome job. You can listen to it before the print comes out.
And they're all rom-com, all your feature books.
Yes. These are rom-coms. The obituary one, so that's gonna be rom-coms. But the Chinese witch perfume one, that's fiction. So not rom-com.
Are
So
they
the
all
relationships
gonna
with her and her mother more than like her and the dude.
Are they all source books? Who's gonna print your?
Yes. They're all the source books.
How about you, Suzanne? What's next for you?
I just turned in my book yesterday that was developmental edits, so I think it's on track for next year, next spring. It's currently called One Last Word, but it might change. I saw the cover concept and I really like it, so I'm like, okay, I think it goes well with what I'm trying to do. It's more book club fiction, I would say, than my rom-com-y stuff, but they'll probably still categorize it as rom-com because that's all I know how to do. But you did not hear that. We're all friends now, right? But I don't know what will stay in the book because my editor is actually changing. She's retiring, so I'm moving to a new editor. So what I can tell you is that it is the adult version of To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
Oh.
It's inspired by that, so that's how I
That's
got
fun.
that idea.
Sounds good.
But it's gonna be a standalone. Not
I think it will be a standalone. It has potential for being more of a series, but the idea though is basically, the main character is in the VC world, and she is a tech app that sends out messages, and it goes haywire and just sends out messages to people she did not want to send
Oh
it to.
my god, I love it.
of course, Suzanne.
I
Of
love
course,
it.
something like
And then
that.
what's worse is my editor was like, I think you could do more chaotic than this. And I was like, I can, but are you sure? And then now it's just a wild. So I don't know, she'll have me dial it back. That's why I was like, I don't know what's staying and what's going. So, but that's the gist of it. Yeah. So I get to tackle, like in all my books, I like to tackle the adult books, like the gaming book, where I address the gaming industry. Then investment banking, and then this will be the VC world. So I've been interviewing VCs, and the female perspective has been very interesting. Yeah, on who gets
So
funding,
wait,
who doesn't.
You're only doing one book this year?
One book this year,
Are
if
you
I
sure?
can. Yes. So we will see.
I'm so used to Suzanne.
I know,
Just,
she's
you know,
I'm
prolific.
tired. I'm so tired. But yes, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.